It is about time we take a closer look at the Wheelbarrow FPV drone.
Anyone goes near it and they have to fire it.
That was...
I don't know if I got anyone, but I just heard the screaming.
Three people sprint away.
Now this is my attempt at making an airsoft FPV drone that isn't flying, because of course that is just a whole big can of worms when it comes to safety. So this is a ground-based Kamikaze airsoft drone, RCXD, whatever you want to call it. The bodywork of the Wheelbarrow is designed to be almost entirely printable. Now this is quite a substantial build. It's not that complicated when you look at it. It's effectively just a remote control car with a couple of Meteorite grenades on top, but it does take quite a bit of soldering and wiring, and indeed quite a bit of printing as well. But it is designed to be as quick and easy to make as possible, and most of the parts you can get off Amazon. So to start off with, the bodywork is all made out of PLA+, and it's designed to be as quick and easy to make as possible. The chassis is one piece and it will fit on an Ender 3, and I've got it partially disassembled right now. So in the top part here we have our FPV system, and I'm not a massive expert on this sort of thing, so I've just got a cheap kit from AliExpress. I also tried a different antenna on it, and the camera doesn't really have any sort of specific mounting point. You just screw the screws for the bracket straight into the top skin layer of the chassis. Now the final design won't require all this dremeling here, that was just part of the prototype. There's also a little fan strapped on to the transmitter in the top here, because these sorts of things are designed to be on airborne remote control models, so you've got plenty of air blown over them to keep them cool. On something like this you do want a bit of forced ventilation. At the front as well we have a sheet of 6mm polycarbonate, which is the lens protector. If we go to the sides, we have two of these Meteorite C4 style bodies, and these just bolt onto the top armor plating, and these are fired by two Meteorite electric fuses. I've got a guide on how these go together, so I'm not going to waste your time in this video. Oh, whilst we're at it, the front and back armor plates are identical, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. You just print a couple of these, chuck them on the front and back, and I've used mostly wood screws to screw this together to keep it nice and accessible. Literally just some basic wood screws. Underneath the armor plates we have two different compartments which contain all of the electrics. On either side we have a little generic speed controller, just a normal brushed speed controller, and this is what drives each motor bank. So we have these two motors on either side. These are 550 RPM 12 volt gear motors, so you don't need any separate transmission. The suspension is purely in the tyres give, and that's to keep it nice and easy, and so it's four-wheel drive.
I climb that.
So there's a speed controller either side, and this steers with a skid steering style system. In fact, the controller is this RadioLink 5-channel 2.4 GHz transmitter. Got this off Amazon, they're relatively cheap, and yeah, I've got 230 meters range out of this before the control signal started to really freak out. I've just got the standard whip antenna on the receiver right now, and what I've done is I've used a cable tie, a couple of cable ties in fact, to make a sort of spine to hold it up so it doesn't get wrapped around the axles. And this has an onboard mixer as well, so I can actually mix the steering to be on the, obviously on the steering wheel, which, because this is skid steering and not your Ackerman style car steering, you will have to do a bit of mixing, otherwise the channels will be all over the place. So you got your forward and backwards and your left and your right. And then to fire it, I use this button here, which is just a momentary button. And to fire it, we have it's in there somewhere, we have an auxiliary switch, which is usually used for switching on like headlights or, you know, winches on remote control vehicles. But because they are in a state of stall with these fuses, they only move a bit and that's it. You don't really want to be firing them for too long. So that just connects to the channel for that button there. The speed controllers and the firing system are all wired in parallel to the common power connections. Speaking of which, we have a dirty great big 11.1 volt battery in the bottom of the chassis here. This is a 6,000 milliamp hour 50C 11.1. It doesn't really need to be an absolute monster when it comes to the current output, because this thing doesn't draw that much. It probably draws at most about like 10 amps. You want a decent sized capacity because you want plenty of endurance on this thing. And the positive side of things goes through this little connector here, this Dean's connector right here. And the idea of this is you have a loop connected across the male connector over here. So what you would do to turn it on is you'd plug this in. I've got the battery disconnected right now, and that would power it up. And then to disconnect it, you pull it out and that kills the whole thing. And that just goes in series with the positive connection between the positive output of the battery and all of the common positive connections. So the FPV system, the fan for the FPV system, both speed controllers and the firing system, they're all connected in parallel. Both sets of motors are wired in parallel, so you have a parallel pair here and a parallel pair on that side. And obviously you want the pair of wheels on each side to be turning the same way. If one wheel turns one way and one wheel turns the other, then just flip the polarity of one of the motors and it should sort it out. And then of course you can use any reversing functions on here to reverse the channels, so that way you can get this driving how you want. I've also chucked together a basic little power filtering circuit in here for the FPV camera. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but it's worth a shot. And for the wheels, we have these great big chunky off-road style tires, but crucially we have a metal rim, and I put some larger tires on it. I think these are about 120 mm in diameter. You can go slightly larger, but you want to make sure that they don't collide with each other in this gap here. You don't really want to go any smaller than this because it can get beached otherwise. And you still want to drive this carefully because there are some areas of my local site where you will get this thing stuck.
Oh, you know what you should do?
Chris Cole never had to put up with this, did he? Oh, sorry, John, I'm getting a bit stuck. Pardon me, pardon me.
And then to mount the wheels onto the motors, we have some 6mm D shaft to hex converters, and then we have a custom made spacer between the rim and the motor coupling, so that way we don't end up with the tires rubbing against the chassis. And then we've got some bolts going through holding the motors in place as well. But I also recommend you put a 20 amp fuse in just in case you get a major short, because if you short that battery out there, it is going to put out a monstrous amount of current. There are going to be people out there who claim that this sort of thing is unfair on the airsoft field, and indeed I have had people mention this to me when I've been using it. Now, anyone who thinks this is unfair is more than welcome to try and drive it for 10 minutes. And with this sort of thing, you're just sitting around driving it to the target. 9 times out of 10, you're just sitting there, you won't find anything. And in fact, even if you do encounter a target, there's no guarantee you'll get them. You've got one shot. And there's also a rule at my local site where I can't drive this back to reload. I have to go retrieve it. So in some games, I literally only have one shot. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, then please make sure you leave a like. If you want to support what I do, then make sure you check out fulcrumairsoft.com and Fulcrum Airsoft on Cults 3D. And you can find the Wheelbarrow on Cults 3D, as well as the C4 body on its own if you want to make your own style of chassis. And if you want to be part of the channel, then please make sure you subscribe too. All of your support, as usual, is massively appreciated. And if you want to see this thing in action, you can check it out right here.